The police and some of the other organisations that support. You'll notice when they march past, there's a lot of them are wearing medals and all that, so the ex-servicemen are wearing the medals, as I said earlier on, of their ancestors.
And not to mention that there still is to this day a very strong overlap. A lot of people who would have served then go on to Queensland Police, Queensland Ambulance, the Fire and Emergency Services. We'll see a lot of that there as well. So people who have not just their ancestors' medals, but medals of their own that they'll be wearing, even though they've now moved on to those other services.
Correct, and a lot of their training from the military, they transfer over to those other organisations. So the military is a good grounding for a lot of those people. That doesn't take anything off those that serve in those organisations that haven't been involved. They all provide the community with great assets.
That's right. Now we can see the first of the parade making their way past the Tobruk Pool, and we can see as mentioned, the police out in front. We also have a couple of members of the Light Horse. We've got Deborah Carson and Melissa Newsom, who are riding members of the Australian Light Horse Association. They're doing their job to preserve the history and tradition of the Australian Light Horse. Good to hear from Bushy talking there a few minutes ago as well, who was in that role for 25 odd years, I think Michael said. Of course, the dedication to the Australian Light Horse Regiments and Light Horsemen who served both in war and peace are very much ongoing, which is why we have associations and groups around the country who want to keep that tradition well and truly alive.
And behind them, Pat, is obviously the Military and Historical Vehicle Club Townsville. Now, they parade here every year, and their vehicles are preserved, all ex-military vehicles, and it's a credit to them, the upkeep. In fact, I passed one in the pouring rain coming in this morning, and behind them will be the Totally and Permanently Disabled Ex-Servicemen's Association, the TPIs, and they're established to look after the welfare of ex-service persons who were classified as permanently disabled, deemed for serving our country.
That's right. We know that they operate out of their base there at Dean Street Park, and that's something that's probably remiss of me not to have mentioned sooner as well. We really didn't have anywhere near the numbers of our older veterans represented last year. Due to COVID, it was obviously a situation that was not of anyone's choosing, but it is wonderful to be seeing them here today, and I can see you're already giving plenty of people away. Oh, there's Dutchie.
There's Dutchie riding there, and you'll notice there they all salute the reviewing officer. Proud moment.
Of course, good to see him in the motorcycle on the side carriage this time around though. You see some of the vehicles here that are noted as being and carrying veterans of the Korean and Malayan Wars.
And see Bill Whitburn's in there in the second vehicle. He decided to be in cavalry, not ride a horse, or should I say tanky, and he's in a car now, or should I say a jeep.
It really is a very good contingent from the Military and Historic Vehicles Club today.
Yes, it's as I said, I passed a couple of them in the rain this morning, and these vehicles are immaculately kept.
Although not great in the rain, not noted for being great in the rain, given that most of them don't have any windows or doors on the side. Nothing to speak of anyway. Yes, you're absolutely right. We've got a harsh climate for vehicles here in North Queensland, but these vehicles are very well looked after. Considering their age, I think they're in very good condition.
Well, most of them are World War II vehicles. You'll see some of the tax signs on the USA. So World War II, and it goes back a long way. And you know, they didn't have side covers in the rain because they had to be able to get out of that vehicle pretty quick if they were attacked, whatever. But again, there we have the Spartan doing a return flyover. Yes, there's a lot of vehicles this year, Pat.
There really are. Well, we can see that, in fact, we can start to hear in the distance. I don't know if the microphone's picking it up quite yet, but if you're here in person, you'll certainly be starting to hear the sound of the 1RAR band. And that means that we're getting closer to seeing the first of our serving men and women. but we still have a number of veterans who are getting a very big round of applause as they come through in these historic vehicles today.
You know, it's interesting with the TPIs. You know, our current conflicts. Since the last 22 years, the Australian Defence Force has been on operations, and some of those people will come back with issues, and so the TPI Association looks after those. A fantastic organisation.
Nice demonstration there too. I fully appreciate that.
Yeah. And you'll notice just behind there's the Good Shepherd home, and behind that we've got the Australian flag, the New Zealand flag, and the RSL flag.
That's right. Remembering, importantly, that it's not just an Australian Day today, it's the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps that we are here to be thinking of and be mindful of. And we will have more opportunities to be giving a special attention to the New Zealanders when they come through a little bit later on.
It's interesting to note too, Pat, we're now seeing the 3rd Brigade contingent approaching the dais, led by the Brigade Commander, and the units in that is 1 RAR, correction, 1 Royal Australian Regiment, 2nd Cavalry Regiment, 1st Battalion Royal Australian Regiment, 3rd, 4th Third Battalion Royal Australian Regiment, 4th Royal Regiment of Australian Artillery, 3rd Combat Services Support Battalion, followed by the 3rd Combat Engineer and the Signals. So all the firepower and the communications and the support is now marching past us.
And that's the Brigadier calling everyone, calling them to make their salute.
Also the Parade Marshal, Row 1 Brian Buskell, OAM. There's the wedge tail, and as you can see, he's a little bit agitated, but all the noise, it would be a bit hard.
I'd call that a salute. But look at this. This is a massive contingent of servicemen and women. In army uniform, they are stretching as far as I can see, and we've got a pretty good vantage point here, so up way beyond.
Yes, the 1 RAR band coming up. And as I said before, this is the first time. It's really good. And you'll notice a lot of the medals that our soldiers are wearing, so they've seen a lot of service over the last few years. And here we have Septimus. And it looks like he might be behaving himself, which is good to see.
Yes, I'm not quite sure if we heard you there, but Septimus following the band.
Yes, and he's doing it in style. He's
stepping it out,
being a good boy.
It's very good to see.
As I said before, Pat, in each contingent here, the commanding officer and the regimental RSM is leading the troops and the officers and the men.
Yes, this is a very big group of Army men and women represented here today.
And I think it's appropriate. As I said many times, we're a garrison city, and the pride of Townsville is marching today.
That's it. Well, we can see some blue sky now, but it is more humid than we might have anticipated due to those showers we had. Well, rain earlier and showers more recently, but I think it's definitely better than what we might see in some of the instances where we ask the servicemen and women to be on parade and to be marching and out of the hot sun and that sort of thing. So at least we have spared them those conditions today.
And it's very important the soldiers marching today. As I said, the brigade, there's all the support battalion, there's the signals, communications, and all those aspects, and particularly on the logistics side, make the front line soldier, they're supplied well and looked after. Oh, there's another mascot that I wasn't aware of.
It's the sulphur-crested cockatoo. I'm not sure of its name either, I'm sorry.
So I apologise for that. I wasn't informed of that, but...
Next, we have the representatives of the Royal Australian Air Force, and the Air Force contingent is led by Wing Commander Michael Selman.
And once again, Pat, this guard comprises of aviators who have recently returned from domestic operations, supporting Operation COVID-19 Assist and Flood Assist. And that contingent comprised of 27 squadrons, 65 air-based recovery, 383 squadron, combat survival training school, 1 expeditionary hospital squadron, 452 squadron, detachment Townsville, and the 2nd security force squadron. So a fantastic representation from our Air Force.
That's it, and good to see they brought the dogs out too.
Yes.
The dogs are one of the signature events, I think, or the signature draw cards that we see from them. They're definitely recognisable on a day like today. Now we start to see our veterans coming through. The Navy contingent, the first of that group.
And then we obviously have the Royal Regiment Armoured Corps, the Royal Australian Armoured Corps, the Black Hats. We've mentioned that many times, and they've got a proud history. Followed by the Royal Australian Artillery.
And the signallers are there too, the Royal Australian Corps of Signallers.
And there's the 1st Battalion Association. Again, a fantastic turnout today.
That's it, not surprisingly, a very solid contingent representing the 1RAR Association.
And following that will be the 2nd Royal Australian Regiment Association, members of the 2nd Battalion Royal Australian Regiment. Again, a lot of these people, these battalions have served in a lot of places. 2nd Battalion, Japan, Korea, Malaya, Vietnam, Malaysia, Rwanda, East Timor, Solomons, Iraq and Afghanistan. And they also provided humanitarian assistance in Fiji and Tonga.
Once again, when we talk about these relatively recent events, we've got significant numbers, and I think that underlines the fact that Townsville has such an embedded and entrenched veteran community. The fact that people who could have chosen to move on after their military service had ended are still with us here today and part of our community, an important part of our community at that.
Third 3RAR association, nicknamed the Old Faithful. Said they were the workhorse of the regiment, especially in the first decade of raising. And they were raised after World War II. And pipes.
Yes, very recognisable by having the pipers there with us as well.
Right,
next up we have 2-4. I think we've got 2-4 Battalion of the Royal Australian Regiment. Once again, solid history here, formed in 1973, delinked in 1995, part of the 3rd Brigade and was leader in operational deployment force roles in Australia. And its 22-year history involves deployments to Butterworth, Malaysia and Rwanda. Yes, the Vietnam veterans in good voice as they...
Following on is dear and close to my heart is obviously Australian Army Aviation Corps. I've got to be biased, but they're proudly marching and they've been since 1915 throughout the world. As I said, the Army Flying Corps World War I that developed into the Royal Australian Air Force. 30 Terminal Squadron, again a fantastic organisation.
The Termites.
Yep, the Termites, they go right back as far as the Indonesian confrontation in Borneo. and they're known as the cargo specialists and form part of the ship's army detachments, manning HMAS Sydney, the army ships John Monash and Japaracha in Vietnam, and obviously Manora and the ships today.
And you can see the importance of them. They've been to Somalia, Bougainville, this is quite a list, East Timor, Solomon Islands, Iraq, Afghanistan, Kuwait and the Persian Gulf, and that's before you even start to get into the humanitarian work that they've done. Like I was saying before though, you know, we see those people operating out of Townsville whenever the need arises. They come here and they deploy and go and start to do that important work.
The next one is the Australian Army Medical Corps, and look, without them, our wounded soldiers and our sick soldiers, they're just instrumental and vital to keeping the health of the Defence Force.
And that includes the Nursing Corps as well.
And the Dental Corps. The Army Association and all these men and women provide all the support to maintain our vehicles. That's just one aspect of it. Our aircraft and all our mechanised stuff, they provide a vital role, and without them, units just would not be operational effective.
And again, very well represented, as we've come to expect from Ramey.
Military Police Association, they were formed in 2004 as a national organisation open to all ranks, including current and former members of the Australian Corps of Military Police. Again, if you see all on their banners as they march past, you'll just see the places that they've served in, and again around the world.
Well, we know that they're usually the first ones in and the last ones out. They are the ones who secure the bases. They make sure that things are as safe as they can be within those operating environments, which can be quite hostile, to put it mildly.
There's the NASHOs, 1951 to 72. The National Service Association, they were instrumental, and NASHOs in Vietnam particularly, where they went over, got the lucky ballot, and went over to serve in places like Vietnam.
I think we've got quite good crowds here today. I think the weather was a question mark and obviously kept a lid on the number of people who made it to dawn services when there was rain around the region, but I think we've got very good numbers of people here at the march today, and the weather is playing its part, which is a very nice thing to see. My name's Pat Hessian, here with you today alongside Major John Lavery, retired, and bringing you some information about what's happening here on the Strand in Townsville. Usually when we talk about weather on the 25th of April here in North Queensland, we would expect clear, sunny skies, beautiful temperatures in the mid-20s. We've got a little bit of blue in the sky starting and trying desperately to poke its way through, but some late season rain, while not ideal for Anzac Day, is well received given that compared to other parts of the country, we actually haven't had that much the last few months. Well, a slight pause, slight gap, but we move on next to the Royal Australian Air Force Association.
Yes, and they formed, they were veterans of the Australian Flying Corps, as I said, in February 1920, in the aftermath of the Great War, and their aim is to keep their colleagues together and raise funds to support the families and members. This is another one, Rifle Company Butterworth. They've been having a long history of applying to get the Active Service Medal, and it's still being looked at. But again, people forget that we sent our people over there to protect the RAF base at Butterworth in Malaysia.
Now, I think we've got our cadets coming through. First of all, the Naval Cadets from the TS Coral Sea, and then the Army Cadets also being represented.
Yeah, and look, those cadets, they get enrolment ages from 12 years old to 18 for the new cadets, and obviously I think they teach them some vital traits, I should say, that make them very good, reliable citizens.
We also have 101 Squadron Air Force cadets coming through right now. Now we move into the community groups. That's the next part of the parade here on the Strand today. And they're led by the QCWA, the local branch, and particular note for them, it's a big year for them in Queensland this year. It's the 100th anniversary for the QCWA, although my information is that the local branch have to wait until next year to celebrate their 100th anniversary. We also have Alliance Francaise de Townsville being represented.
Yes,
of course, a lot of what we talk about during our commemorations of the war years centres around France, and that connection is alive and well.
Yeah, it's interesting to note with that Alliance Francaise, 295,000 Australians served between March 1916 and November 1918, and there were 12 Queensland battalions involved with those deployments.
Now I need to give a shout out to the Girl Guides as well, who've just come past us, given that my youngest is marching with them this year, and has given me a big wave on the way through.
Again, Pat, it wouldn't be a parade without the piper.
The Scots next up. They have kilts, they have tartan, and of course they have the bagpipes.
Oh, it's interesting, the Townsville University Hospital, that's the first year that they've marched together as a whole organisation, and they're marching to support the spirit of Anzac.
That's right. We have, of course, seen the period nursing uniforms many a year here on Anzac Day, but they're marching under a different banner today. Salvation Army coming through. We haven't seen him yet, but we will see the Sally Man.
Yes, he was.
He was parked directly behind where we are here in Anzac Park, but he may have made his way around to the tail end of the parade, I'd say.
Then we have the Scouts. Australian Scouts have been operating for 114 years, and again, Scouts provide training for youth members from 5 to 25 years of age.
That's right. We have the kids in red and blue, the first of the schools, and marching in reverse order this year. Woolgaroo get to lead. Usually they're bringing up the rear, but this time around they're in first position, which is great to see.
And as I said, Pat, there's 32 schools represented today, and they have a proud history. As I said, the mid-1800s through to now, where obviously during the war, their school grounds were used for various military establishments, and you'll see some of these students proudly wearing the medals of their forebears, and as I said before, they're here in spirit.
We hear the marching band from Southern Cross Catholic School. We also have William Ross and Townsville West, all coming through in very quick order, not to mention Town High.
It's interesting to note with Townsville West, Pat, that opened in 1887.
And finally seeing some activity there at the old historic building there on the end of Hingham Road, which is nice to see. Of course, the modern school is in there a little bit further behind. Got to give everyone a big wave from Townsville South. That's my kids' school, so I'm out of place if I don't give them a big wave.
Townsville Grammar, again, founded in 1888, so they're a proud history.
That's right. We mentioned very quickly, I know, given that close connection I've got, Townsville South is one of those that had Americans posted at it during World War II. We have, I'm going to miss someone out, we have Townsville Grammar and Townsville Central, which was mentioned in that dawn service this morning, being the, I'll get it, Private Alexander.
Yeah, and
one of their alumni.
Townsville Central, Pat, is celebrating their 153rd birthday. Campus on the side of the old Townsville Jail and the former Townsville Police Academy.
Cathedral School of St Anne and St James coming through here for us as well. I might have missed out Thuringowa High School.
I think we
Apologies.
might have. Yeah.
Apologies. Everyone's coming through pretty quickly.
Again, St Patrick's College, founded in 1878, amongst the oldest buildings in Townsville, and it housed part of the Northern Command during World War II.
And of course, I can actually see them from where we are right now, just a little bit further down the Strand.
St Margaret's Mary's, again, began as a primary school in 1936.
It wasn't their turn this year, but we often see their choir at the dawn service as well, the Bella
Yes.
Voce choir. But they do have a rotation, so they don't get to do it every single year. We'll see them back again soon.
St Joseph's of Strand again was founded in 1873 as the oldest operational Catholic school within the Diocese of Townsville.
We have St Joseph's Catholic School at Mundingborough. And the Railway Estate State School, and the next band we're going to hear is from Pimlico State High.
It's interesting, the Railway Estate, Pat, during the war years, they had dug air raid shelters in the slit trenches, and the students dug in the yard of the school in case of air attack. There's a bit of a gap now, Pat. The next school coming on is the Anzac State School. Again, they were established in 1920. And also, I've got to mention that a lot of these schools have their students from defence families. So there's a good percentage of the schools that have their children from defence families right across the board in Townsville. So there is that link again with
That's
community.
Right. Especially as we get to Anumba and Annandale and those that are in very close proximity to Laverack Barracks, we start to see that. Of course, as you move over towards the RAF base, you'll start to see that. We haven't seen them yet, but they're not too far off. I know in alphabetical order, but the Garbutt State School, even on the logo of the school, you can see the connection there that we've got, and that, that history that has been there pretty well since day dot. So Anumba, followed by Northern Beaches State High School, one of our newer schools.
Yes, they opened their doors in 1997 to 165 students.
A little bit bigger these days.
Yes.
And here's the Mundingborough State School. Of course, they have a strong history with the Defence Forces going back to the First World War. They had the cadets, in fact, believe they had compulsory cadets back at that time.
Yes.
So everyone was involved. It was something that obviously, not to that same extent, but that connection is there and is maintained. Marian Catholic School are coming through now. And we have the Kerwin State High School, of course, one of our largest schools.
And their motto is, or their mission is to provide educational excellence for tomorrow's citizens.
And again, being centrally located in terms of the city, wasn't originally the case, but centrally located these days, many children of defence families.
Ignatius Park, the college grounds were home to the first cadet program in the area. And the next one, the Holy Spirit, I mentioned earlier on, Pat, some of these schools housed, and during World War II, the United States 13th Station Hospital was based where the school now stands.
In their distinctive uniforms, they're very easy
Yes.
to pick, as you would normally expect. Hermit Park State School coming through. And again, one of those older schools that's been around for a long time, has a significant connection to the Defence Forces. Good to see them well represented here today. And just look at all these families that are coming alongside the kids as well. You can just see there are a lot of people here today. It's very different to what we've experienced these last few years.
Heatley State School, and that has 50 years of students graduating.
Heatley Secondary College in there as well.
And followed by Currajong State School. Oh, it's been a fantastic turnout, particularly with the schools, because the weather and getting wet, and I take my hat off to them. They've been magnificent to show their
This is quite an impressive parade that we're seeing here today, and it's just so wonderful to see that there are so many people who are a part of it within our community. I think in some circles, John, there might have been trepidation. Will the crowds come back after 2 years where we really haven't had things being commemorated to the same extent?
Yes, well, I just
I
noticed.
think we put that to bed.
Yeah, the crowds have just increased. It's been a fantastic day, and as I said, it's just starting to come down again. But we're nearly at the end of the parade, so hopefully they can, when they finish, they can get straight into warm clothes or into vehicles. But
That's right.
it's
So
just fantastic.
I might have put the mocker on that one. So Currajong State School, the Cranbrook State School, we've had Calvary Christian College, Bowley Vale School, and Belgian Gardens.
Annandale, again, a school very close to Laverack Barracks, and there's a lot of the members. 100 of the students are serving Defence Force, children of serving Defence Force members, out of a total of 720 students. So it's a fairly big percentage.
It is.
Annandale Christian College, again, and then followed by the Australian Citizen Christian, the Townsville Citizens Band Association.
And behind the last of the schools here, we have our parade marshal for the schools.
Yes, Warrant Officer Rick Browning. Well done to control all those children and to get them all herded together.
Who else could it be? The Townsville Brass Band.
And the Queensland Ambulance Service.
So now we have our emergency services. We've got the Queensland Ambulance Service, the Queensland Fire and Emergency Services, the State Emergency Service. And as mentioned earlier on, we again see a lot of those people who are wearing their medals, their own medals. You know, they've come from military service at some point, but then they've moved on into the civilian agencies after their time in the services came to an end.
It's interesting to note, Pat, the red fire truck that went past.
The old one, yes.
Yeah, it's 1936. It was shipped over from England.
There it is.
In 36 to Townsville and was in service for approximately 30 years and was retired in 1964. I think it might need to get a new horn, but
No,
it's
there's
pretty
nothing
good.
wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. It's making plenty of noise, and it's making beautiful noise, I've got to say. Of course, we've got some of the more modern equivalents. The rural fire is coming through. We've got the Queensland Fire and Rescue in their familiar red, and then we've got the yellow ones that we're more accustomed to seeing at the airport.
Aviation rescue firefighting, the Queensland Fire and Emergency Services, and the Black River District Super Rural Fire Brigade.
Now, I don't know, if they use their siren, you're going to know about it. You may have regrets about
As
it.
long as they don't point that gun at me.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, it's a decent bit of kit, that one, that's for sure. And here we see at the very tail end of the parade, as expected, the Sally Man is bringing up the rear.
And finally, at the end, Pat, the Queensland Police Service. So they led and they obviously finished off. I'm just glad that we escaped, got through the parade, 95% of it, without the rain coming down. And let's hope people now can get under cover and get their brollies up. But a magnificent parade.
Absolutely, it has been something else. We seem to have a little traffic jam in front of us right now, but that's okay. But I'm looking at the traffic jam on either side of the Strand here as well. Of course, the vehicles and the people on parade coming down the road segment. But in both sides of the street, there is just a constant stream of people and umbrellas. It is actually quite spectacular. I know I said it a moment ago, I think the crowds have picked up even more since I made that comment, John. This is something else. Of course, we had to have the biggest truck of them all parked right next to us at that point in time. Now, it was remiss of us, John, earlier on. We were going to mention that we've got the parade marshal. He did come through at the very end of the army contingent.
Yes.
And
yeah, and we've also got with the reviewing officer, remiss of me to mention the RSM of the Army here is also, and obviously he will always travel and be very close to the Chief of Army, and it's the way it should be.
that's right. So we see The Lieutenant General, as we know, has now been able to rest his arm. He doesn't have to maintain the salute any longer. In fact, as soon as we got through the veterans, that's when he would have relaxed himself there, as we had the civilian groups and the schools coming through. So they all show their respect. We'll see. We didn't get a chance to mention it at the time, but we see the school children, for example, if they're wearing their hats, being asked to take their hats off as that sign of respect. And they are showing that respect themselves as they come through.
It was a very well organised parade today, but the gaps were fairly good, so we did get an opportunity to try and talk about everybody. We probably missed a couple, so my apologies for that, Pat. But again, well orchestrated, and again, a very important parade this year because we've had the brigade commander of the 3rd Brigade here leading the parade, and Chief of Army. So you can't get any better than that.
That's it. Now, we mentioned them. It was good. I was thinking with the weather, maybe there could have been some late scratchings with the mascots, but we saw 3 of them, in fact. So we had a bonus one. We'd been told to expect 2, so that was nice to see. What's the thinking behind having them there? I know you touched on that, but I'm curious a little bit more about the role that they actually play and the purpose that they serve.
Well, I think they symbolise the unit, esprit de corps, and as I said, the first CO got Septimus in because he wanted that to boost the morale of his troops, and there's a lot more around Australia. You know, there's a Black Panther, there's Blue Healer. There's quite a few around Australia that from other units that are not Townsville based, obviously, but those other the two, the Cockatoo and
the Falcon.
No, we got I'm trying to think.
The pony, the Shetland pony.
No, we've got the pony. We've got Septimus. We got Trooper Courage.
And the Cockatoo, yes.
Sulphur Crested Cockatoo, which I didn't, unfortunately, wasn't aware of. So again, my apologies to that, but we'll do better next time.
We'll do some homework. Yes, that's right. We'll do some homework on that before next year. Of course, this. You know, what time are we? We're just before 10 o'clock on Anzac Day. So, for people who have marched today, what are the different things that the day might mean? Because I know that it's very personal. Some will do one thing, others will do another. What are some of the more familiar things that you might have come across, or maybe some of the more surprising things that you might have heard of the way that people commemorate Anzac Day in their own way?
Well, I think that, you know, as I said before, Pat, the services that they did a couple of years ago because of COVID, where they came out at the front of their houses, and as I said, it was very moving because the candles were flickering, the last post was being played, and you looked across, just in my street alone, and there was just a row of the lights and the flickering candles. So I think it gave the opportunity for the kids and the family unit to be together. And also for those people that can't get to these parades. I mean, so it gave them the opportunity, and obviously it's so good, you know, in these current times. I think it's so important that we commemorate Anzac. It was the birth of our nation from a military perspective, and you know, some of the stats we lost a lot of personnel in particular in World War I and World War II. What people don't understand, we also lost in other confrontations the Malaysian emergency in the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s. I think we lost about 35 soldiers killed in action, and I think about 100 injured. So throughout history, since World War I, you know, Korea, Timor, and let's not forget all our troops that are overseas around the world with the UN. I was fortunate enough to be with the UN for 19 months in the Middle East, and they do a fantastic job over there. So Australia and that slouch hat is renowned around the world as a very professional fighting force, and Air Force and Navy. I will not forget them, but Australian Defence as a whole.
Of course, there is the rest of the day. I guess you know, the RSL is a familiar haunt, and for very good reason. But there are others who will choose to do their own thing.
Look, I noticed that they've allowed the whole weekend for 2 up to be made legal. So I think there'll be a few games of chance on. And I think now a lot of the veterans and a lot of people will just go to their local haunt, their local pub or where, and meet. and get together. That camaraderie is the most important thing, where they'll get together, share a sherbet or two, and talk about old times. But it's a special bond, and as I said, even with our community services, any uniform type organisation, they're together as a team and a bond.
And you're only relatively recently retired yourself. Has that changed your perspective on Anzac Day at all?
Oh, look, I'll be the first to admit, Pat, after 47 years wearing the uniform, it's been a very hard year and a half for me to come to grips with becoming a civilian. But my views and my mates are still there. And as I said, my last job was the manager of the Army Museum North Queensland, which hopefully will be open soon. Due to obviously restrictions reference COVID, but I would encourage anybody to visit that museum. It shows the proud history and it's an army museum, so I'll be biased here, but it shows that proud history of the army in North Queensland, as far south as Rockhampton, and as far north as the Cape, and as far west as Mount Isa. So it's a big area.
That's right. Now, no qualms about you being somewhat biased, given that we know which camp you certainly spent a significant portion of your life in. But I guess we should also mention that, for those who aren't aware, that there is the Royal Australian Air Force Museum as well, which is housed at just off Ingham Road there at the RAF base. So there are opportunities for you to be immersing yourself more fully in the military history that we have here in North Queensland, in addition to, of course, the things that you might even see at the top of Castle Hill with the old emplacements and, of course, the forts on Magnetic Island, all of those things that you don't have to go to a museum to see, but, again, are reminders of that history. Yeah,
and there's also the Maritime Museum. I don't know if they're open or whatever, but, again, you're right. The free services are here well represented. And it's a garrison city, not only for Army, for Air Force too. Mainly the Navy is north in Cairns, but there was representation here today, which was fantastic.
Indeed. Well, John, thank you very much for being a part of Anzac Day here on the Strand once again, giving us the benefit of your wisdom and knowledge about how the different pieces of the military fit together, and of course that wonderful knowledge of the history as well. I think it really adds to the experience. It helps us to appreciate what we're seeing just that little bit more than we were already. So thank you very much. It has been wonderful. I love doing it with you. It's been good. Hopefully we get invited back next year.
Pat, it's been a pleasure for me to be with you, providing that professional guidance that I needed. You're very kind to say I'm no expert, but I do my best. And again, it's not hard to do your best in this town. It's a garrison city.
Well, your best is more than good enough for me. Thanks, John. Thank you very much for everything, and thank you for being here today. I'm going to hand you back to Michael Clark for the next few minutes.
Thank you so much.
And also Major John Lavery, retired. Wonderful to hear that commentary once again along the Strand.